Did you know that over 70% of franchise brands say that marketing is their single biggest growth challenge? Now, in franchising, it's not just about brand awareness. It's about attracting qualified leads, building credibility, and fueling scalable growth. And that's what this episode is all about.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Joining us today is Allie Kraus. She's the Chief Marketing Officer at Benetrends and the incoming Vice Chair of the International Franchise Association's Women's Franchise Committee. She's recognized as a franchise influencer and one of the top influential women in franchising. Now, Allie's built a reputation for blending innovative marketing and practical strategies that drive real growth. So, Allie, welcome to Fordify Live.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I met you in Canada this year, Ford, so it's nice to be back and be a guest on your podcast.
Well, I appreciate it. And I know in the green room we were talking like, what are we going to talk about? What's the list of questions? I'm just going to wing it. Well, here's the deal. My episode is, we're live right now on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and a few other places. And the audio from this episode becomes the Business Growth Show podcast. And so our listeners are franchisees, franchisors, private equity brands, a lot of entrepreneurs and executives from organizations. So the topic of marketing applies whether they're inside and outside franchising, but you've also got a flair for helping women in franchising. So I want to dig into that today. So while we start, the first question that I'm winging with you is tell us a little bit how you got into franchising and how you got to the position you're in now.
First of all, it's way more fun when you wing it because I feel like every podcast, the best stuff comes from the outtakes. So that's the best kind to listen to, in my opinion, too. But everybody says franchising happens accidentally. So I try really hard not to use that phrase anymore because I think
every guest has said that to me.
It's so cliche. So at least I'm acknowledging that it's cliche. But I was a special ed teacher for 7 years. I live here in the Baltimore, Maryland area. So did that for a while, went to college for special ed. And then I was looking for growth, which is the topic of your podcast, Ford. And I didn't want to be a principal. So I didn't see anything past teaching for me. And I met the CEO, Richard Huffman, of a emerging brand here in Maryland, a childcare center called Celebree. And I worked with Richie and the marketing team while he was getting ready to launch his business that he had already had for a long time. So it was really exciting to see a brand go from non-franchise to franchise and be part of that marketing team and learn everything there in a wonderful way with some incredible CMOs who have become mentors and friends of mine. And I was there about 4 years before going to entrepreneur media and learning the digital ad side of that for a little while. And I've been at Benetrends for about 3.5 years now. So time flies and it's no longer accidental. It's very purposeful and I'll never leave this industry again.
Well, I think that's great. Now, I know with your role that you're coming into, leadership and franchising, you're stepping into that leadership role for IFA's Women's Committee. What's an initiative that you're really passionate about launching in that committee? Now, keep in mind, for those listening, this is for information and educational purposes only. This isn't a solicitation to buy a franchise or sell a franchise. And she has no idea what I'm going to ask. So I'm just curious though, as you take on that committee role, because I've been on a lot of committees, I've sit on boards and everything, it's volunteer led, it's staff driven, and it's always hard to necessarily get things done. And what is something that you're passionate about that you want to see elevated?
Yeah, you're right. They are volunteer led, which sometimes I think we forget because it starts to feel like a full-time job. But I can speak on behalf of all the women on our committee that it's such a passion-led committee for all of us that we have 25 seats, 2 chairs, we have 2 3-year terms. So you end up hanging around for a long time. These people really become work coworkers and family to you. But one of the most exciting things that I think we've been focusing on a lot, and we'll see more of this moving into 2026, is you always hear people talk about how there's 4,000 plus franchise brands out there. But in my opinion, we tend to see a lot of the same people on LinkedIn at shows. And it feels like this really tiny group of only 100 out of 4,000. And so I know the Women's Franchise Committee is really looking at putting people on stage, putting wonderful women on our webinars, leading our WFNs across the US, and really getting names and brands out there that just aren't as familiar to everybody. So we have a lot up our sleeve for this year's annual leadership conference at the 2026 IFA convention in Las Vegas. And my hope is that if you're an attendee this year, at least 2 people on that stage are people you have never met or heard of, and you take home something new. Because unfortunately, it is hard to find people that we don't all know because we
Right.
stalk them on LinkedIn and we fill out the same forms and we go to the same shows. And so we've had to find ways to really get creative. And great example of this, my daughter has been at a Goddard school for a couple of years. We had a fantastic experience. I loved our franchisee. And I said to the franchisee, you got to get me to this woman. Her name is Jacqueline Burles, from the school support side of their corporate team. And I probably sent her 15 emails to find her. I have never met her, but I'd watched some interviews and seen her on LinkedIn and on the Goddard website. And so I found a creative way to stalk my local franchisee into finding a wonderful woman to put on stage this year. So one example of how stalking is not a negative term.
No, I can appreciate that. I really can. And, I'll be exhibiting this year at IFA, and as a supplier member, I'm a keynote speaker. So I speak at conferences, and it's been a pro and a con, because, when I'm a supplier and then they think I'm going to speak, then they think, oh, he's going to do an infomercial. Like if you're speaking, you're on this podcast right now. Well, we're going to get into what Benetrends is and what you're doing and everything else. We're not here soliciting that. And it's the same thing as a keynote speaker. If you're a true professional, you're delivering value. What you do in your business can be separate, just like you coming on today on the show. And I really appreciate you doing it. I know I had some problems with sending you guys the right link and everything, but you got on. We're here. It's exciting. So what do you see for the future for franchising and the trends that you want to try to leverage as far as marketing is concerned?
Yeah, as far as marketing's concerned, everything I've been saying lately has just been around creativity. I think marketers get bored really fast. And if you're not one of those, good for you. But I think we see marketers constantly looking for what's next and trying to stay young because I'm trying on TikTok really hard, but at some point the next thing comes out and I find myself questioning how to stay relevant, how to stay creative. And so whether that be our referral networks or the way we communicate with our franchisors, and even big picture here, our company goes to 50 to 60 events a year.
Oh, wow.
And we've been around for almost 45 years now. And so working for a legacy brand like that has its own pluses and minuses, but we don't ever want to become stale. And
Right.
I feel like that's the marketing team's job to find a way to be innovative. And I think so oftentimes a lot of the shows or the advertising companies that you work with will send the pitch deck and you pick a price that works for you and you go with it. And recently that's not good enough for me. And so I think pushing boundaries of how can we, I don't even know if people use the word ROI anymore, but how can we get a better post-event or post-experience return on what we did and how are we following up rather than just writing checks to 60 shows a year and showing up and doing the thing. I've put it on myself to really push our sales connections and our friends at a lot of the events companies and a lot of our partner companies to find ways to do something new. And maybe it's creating a sponsorship that was never a sponsorship before.
Right.
But I think the creativity also keeps us young and lively and enjoying what we're doing, which is so important in our industry.
Well, for me, marketing and sales is just giving people enough information that they can make good decisions. And, at the end of the day, there's only 3 ways to drive traffic to a website or to a lead. You're going to create it by your content and your marketing, your relationships. You're going to borrow it by who else reaches the same market, and you're going to buy it by going to a trade show. And so I think that when it comes to marketing, a lot of people get seduced by that, or they become copycat marketers. They look at what everybody else in the industry is doing and they just duplicate it. And that's when it gets stale. So I really applaud you for thinking differently and asking different questions. And, I have a saying that says, if you're asking the wrong question, then the answer doesn't matter. And so you're asking the right questions and you're listening to that. So just want to jump in for a minute, just with the group that's here. If you're listening to this podcast, it's Allie Kraus. She's from the CMO of Benetrends, and it's Benetrends, like Benetrends.com. You can check her out online, check her at LinkedIn, and certainly enjoy this episode and share it with your other colleagues. Okay, so I just had to put that shameless plug so people know who you are and what we're doing here.
Perfect.
So when it comes to cost per lead, so here's a question that I have. So every pre-event call before I do a keynote for a group, whether it's a service business or retail business or a chain store, QSR, fast casual, doesn't matter what franchise brand it is, they're always struggling with the cost to acquire a lead or cost to acquire a customer. And it used to be you could get leads through Google, but now Google has all changed to be AI. And so it's really, how do you get found in the large language models like ChatGPT and Claude, excuse me, and
Yep.
Gemini and all the other ones that are out there, Perplexity. So I'm curious, how has AI affected you in the role that you're in? So going to the trade shows, building the relationships, communicating, creating the ideas. Tell me a little bit more about it. And again, no, she didn't know I was asking this. I'm asking this because I'm curious from her perspective as a CMO, what are you doing differently now that AI is impacting everything?
Yeah, so two thoughts here. Going back on my comment about getting creative and where you're putting yourself into the world, I recently said to the digital agency we worked with, I said, hey, I got this $500 coupon. It was a random Reddit message on LinkedIn that I answered. And I said, let's do Reddit advertising. And they were like, okay, we don't have any clients that have ever wanted to put money into that. And I was like, well, I do, because how are we ever going to know if we don't try it? So I'm not a Reddit user myself. However, I recently heard a statistic, and I can't quote where this is from, but I recently heard a statistic that Perplexity pulls around 60% of their large language model from places like Wikipedia and Reddit.
Oh, absolutely.
And that should be borderline terrifying. So if that's the case, why am I not on Reddit? Why are brands not starting to advertise on Reddit? Why do we not have CEOs and marketing teams answering Reddit threads that are applicable to your company, or encouraging our franchisees and training our franchisees on Reddit? I think there's a big Reddit bubble that's going to explode in the coming years. So I'm doing my best to get ahead of it right now with these models. And the second piece to your question is that the large language models are actually getting borderline dangerous in the industry we're in, because we primarily do rollover as business startups, and it's heavily regulated by the IRS. And so when we have clients coming to us and they've researched things on their own Perplexity or ChatGPT and it's incorrect information, it's causing a lot of damage and a lot of explaining. And so we're trying to also get ahead of that with education. And one of the things we're doing is we set a goal at the start of 2025 to post a video a day, every single day this entire year. And they're short form 30 to 60 second videos that we're going to start recycling into the new year. But a lot of those words are being pulled from our videos. And we're starting to see us organically pop up now on the short form video. That's part of what we see on Google. And that was our biggest goal at the start of the year too, is if we've been talking about video for years. We've been talking about AI coming for years, but the short form video is finally, at least in our case, starting to show in that organic search, which is leading back to our social media, which is leading back to large language models, which hopefully in turn gets that better cost per lead on our website forms. So it's been a constant trial and error, but that's always my advice to marketers who ask. Is I find it fascinating that our digital agency hasn't had a single person yet pull the trigger and put some money into Reddit. My question would be why? If it doesn't work, turn it off after 6 months. But we have to get a little uncomfy to explore what's still so unknown.
Well, you're such a breath of fresh air, because, I always tell people, fish where the fish are. You don't have to be everywhere. There's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Like, there's all these places. You don't have to be everywhere, but in order to be findable. And I think the difference is in traditional marketing 3 years ago, let's just say, you would market, you would get to a part of a customer journey, right? There'd be a suspect to a prospect to a qualified lead to a client or customer to an advocate. And there was a pretty linear customer journey. The challenge now, and just like what you're talking about with Reddit, is that the way people find information is different. So they don't buy the same way they used to. They don't just go to Google. They don't just buy. Deals do not happen before dialogue. So they're going to want to talk to somebody, but they're also going to do their social proof beforehand. So for those of you listening or watching this episode, you can just Google Allie. You'll see everything you wanted to know about her. You'll see her LinkedIn profile. You'll see her profile at Benetrends. Same thing with me. If they don't know who I am, they just Google my name, because I've done a really good job of being findable. So when someone buys in today's day and age, whether it's a franchisee or franchisor or a franchise brand who's trying to get more franchisees, they have to realize that people shop, they scroll, and they stream, and they search. So it used to be just, search, but now they're looking at multiple places. That's why Reddit and sources like that have gone. And what the challenge is, that people can game the system now, because as soon as Reddit becomes an authority, then everybody goes to Reddit. They flood it with answer engine optimization. So it's AEO, not SEO. So the traditional SEO, as we all know it, is dead. It's answer engine optimization. So it's a fancy word for what Allie already said, which is creating those short form videos that have the language in it, the words in it that people are searching for. And more importantly, the more clearly that the video answers the question, the more that it's going to be a citation in Reddit and then a citation in Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, Copilot, and all the other ones. So what's the takeaway for everybody listening to this episode? You're going to have to put more content out, and you're going to have to start to find the top 50 or 100 questions that your ideal prospects, customers, and staff, whatever you're looking for, are asking. And then you have to create content. So it's like we all have these boats in the water, but in order to get to the fish, you got to put bait in the water. And that bait is our short form video. And short form video could be 30 seconds to 3 minutes, or it could be an hour, even though an hour is not what I would consider short form. But those long form videos give you the credibility too. So I'm really happy to see that you're producing those videos now. Are you doing them? Do you have an agency doing them? Is your staff doing them? Like, tell me a little bit more about what your strategy was.
Yeah, a little bit of both. It takes a lot of hands on deck to do it all because it is a lot of work. Anytime someone asks about it, I'm like, you can't do it alone, first of all.
Right.
We always have this giant sales retreat where all of our sales, marketing, and SBA teams from across the US come to our headquarters in Philadelphia. So I got probably about 4 months of content by having people in person, which is always amazing. When you have people in person, grab a tripod, a crappy light to link onto your phone, and immediately you have a studio anywhere you go. So that piece of it is wonderful. Also, we use Riverside. Riverside is an incredible platform that works from people's cell phones, because what we have to also recognize is not everyone's great with technology.
Right,
so
right.
When you have a big team and you want to feature people because they have great things to say and they're thought leaders and they're so good at educationally explaining what they say on the phone all day long. That's the sales team. That's not me. Like, I can pop a camera in front of my face and be comfy, but 95% of our sales team, at least here, does not like it. They do it because they're so if you can have, everyone's used to FaceTime in this day and age. So that's where we've really capitalized on the ability from being able to do it from anybody's home office, from on the road, is using an app like Riverside where it's a link on your phone. You can text it and you pop it open like a FaceTime and boom, you've got great content from there. Our agency does edit them and post them for us, but it's a collaborative effort on making sure that we're hitting those search engine words. And like you said, I'm so glad you touched on the questions, because that's been such a big focus for us this year. I joke all the time, the way I use Google in my home, but people are obviously familiar with Alexa or Siri or whatever it is. And right before this call, my HR manager called me and said, I just learned how to post a job from Paychecks to LinkedIn. Where do you think we're going to see the job? And of course, I'm like, Alexa, if I use the Paychecks app and send a job to LinkedIn, where does it post and how do I get there? Like, the number of words that I said in that sentence. But guess what? I got answers numbered 1 through 5, bulleted perfectly from AI that found me right in the location I needed to get her an answer in a matter of seconds. So that consumer change of how we search for things has been really fun to play around with too, because our blogs kind of went from these like very classic old school SEO, very boring things that you're like, well, no one will read them, but at least they'll drive good traffic.
Right.
So now we're answering these long-winded questions that people are asking in the hopes that we're going to be picked up by the large language models. And so while we're still exploring it, it's at least been fun to be able to look at the way consumers search on Google or any search engine to really change and define and get a lot closer and more granular to find those better leads.
Yeah. So what you did with Alexa, which now everybody who's got their devices have all activated now. So too bad. But what I would say is, I like to use ChatGPT in the voice mode. And so I go to, if I'm doing research, I'm going to go to Perplexity, because Perplexity, for those of you who don't know, go to perplexity.ai. The reason I like Perplexity is because it searches multiple sources, including Reddit, including Substack, including ChatGPT, including other AI models. So it really gives you a more rounded approach. Plus, it cites its citations. It gives you citations of where I'm going to start cussing here in a minute. It gives you citations to where the person, whoever it is, it attributes the credit to them. It's like tongue-tied today. This allergy medicine I'm on is really freaking messing with me, and frickin's a technical term. All right, so we got the AEO. We know we need to do that, and all of our listeners need to really step back from your business and look at the wheel of excellence, from operations to sales and marketing to the customer experience to whatever you're doing, and really look at how do you leverage your content to be more findable and to leverage AI to help you solve those problems. And you see, she's not trying to do everything. She just knows how to ask the question. So if you're using any AI tool out there, yes, there's 17 steps to prompting. We're going to make it really simple. And she did it just in her example. Context. Here's the context. Hey, Alexa, I'm looking to do X, Y, and Z. Context. Expectations. Help me solve X, Y, and Z. Then she's having a conversation. So it's going to give her an answer and she's going to ask questions back and forth. So it's not a one and done. It's a conversation. And then of course she's going to put the human oversight on it. So she isn't just copying and pasting or just using straight from that, because as she just mentioned earlier in the episode, AI can hallucinate and will make up ideas. It'll make up numbers. It'll completely hallucinate. It's basically a toaster on autocomplete that simulates human behavior. So you really have to be careful at how you do that. So I'm glad to see you're doing that. All right, so let's share with our listeners. Well, before you do, I'm going to give you a breath. Take a drink of water. I'm going to hear a word from our sponsor.
Can't cut through the online chaos? This episode is powered by Ignite Visibility, the nation's expert in ROI-driven digital marketing. We help over 90 leading franchise brands and 2,500 locations outrank competitors and convert more customers. Ready to stand out and grow? Claim your free digital marketing audit at ignitevisibility.com. Ignite your growth.
All right, welcome. So tell me a little bit for our listeners, what does Benetrends do?
What do we do? Isn't that the elevator pitch of every franchise show?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've been around for about 45 years, and I would say our biggest bread and butter is that our founder, Len Fisher, back in the 80s, he was an ERISA attorney. And when he founded Benetrends, he realized that he could use his 401k to fund a business if he rolled that over into his own company or his own C corporation. So he actually worked alongside the IRS to coin what is known today as ROBS, rollover as business startups. So we've been doing that for a very, very long time. There's lots of other companies that do it in the industry now, but we really do credit Len Fisher, who created Benetrends, because he was the first to realize that you could do this and it's safe and it's regulated by the IRS. So it's a fantastic way to use funds to essentially invest in yourself and your own business. So again, that's the bread and butter of what we do here. But we also have a fantastic lending team that works with more than 70 banks across the US and Canada to do SBA loans for clients. And we have a lot of little other programs that we throw in there, from unsecured funding to we do combos of ROBS and SBA lending. We also have a fantastic fleet program for any of those vehicles, which includes the wrap and all of the things on the inside of those trucks. So lots of funding options, but we are not a bank. So you can drop that word financial off of us sometimes if it's confusing. I know I was a little fooled when I started interviewing for this position, but we're not a bank. We are a partner in funding.
All right. So you're all about storytelling. I know you have your podcast. I know the stuff you've done in women in franchising. Can you share an example of a campaign or initiative where storytelling really moved the needle?
You know, for us, when I first came here, I think we've always historically in marketing focused so strong on what we do. And that's the very classic, like, brands should do a better job in saying why they do it. But I think we've really missed the mark on telling the franchisee stories. A majority of our new deals and the way we do business are either broker, consultant, partner driven directly from the franchisor or other groups like CPAs, attorneys, etc. We don't do as much straight to market website leads of franchisees who are just casually searching for a franchise.
It's not the model, right?
Yeah, that's just not really where we live. So I think that the biggest opportunity for us was using the 10,000 current franchisees we have in our system to start really like collecting their stories to be able to tell them in marketing stories. Yeah. And they're all across the US and Canada. So it's really hard to get a hold of them and explain like, hey, hello, me, Allie, and this little marketing team over here. I just would like a picture or a video of you. But we did it. It took a long time. And I started really working with franchisees to tell their story, whether that be through written stories on our website, testimonials, which are kind of the simpler of them. But we also did a couple podcasts and we really got to hear down to the ground level what using a ROBS, which so many people are so unfamiliar with, how that can change someone's life and their trajectory for their family. And so our website now, when you go there, all of those images are real franchisees with their spouses, with their partners, in front of their brands that we funded. And so we kind of just in the last 3 years have really been changing the stock image financial company to the one who really made a difference in Americans' lives and their families and their children and their passions. And so it's it's kind of a simple answer that took a long time to make that shift, but it's been really special to watch it come true and hear from real people that you want to talk about, but it's hard to connect, if that makes sense.
It does. And so from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenge or blind spot that most franchise brands have right now?
That's a tough one. You stumped me for the first time. Biggest blind spot. I think from a financial perspective, there's always uncertainty. Like the government shuts down, the rates go up, the rates go down. And I think it always sends people into this kind of panic mode, but it's always a good time to franchise. The franchising model is incredible. That's why we're all here. And so I think that we kind of have this calm about ourselves here, that we do our best to get ahead of those major changes and really reassure our clients and our partners that it'll stabilize out. It's an ebb and flow of changes, and the financial landscape changes, but it's always a good time to buy a business and change your life. And so we try to stick with that kind of motto.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I know when people talk about it's a recession, it's this, it's that, I just say I choose not to participate. Focus on, I want to focus on what I can control, which is my attitude, my allocation time, and my actions. I can't control all these other things that are going on. All right, so final question: what's next for you in Benetrends or in the future? Like, what do you? I know the IFA thing is gonna be really, the women in franchise is gonna be great, and I can't wait to see how you elevate that group, because you're right, it gets stale, it needs new breath, and not to for those of you watching, if you're part of the old committee, I'm not criticizing anything. I'm just saying that it's always important to look at the customer experience. I mean, for me as a marketer, I run a digital marketing agency. I've been in marketing my whole life. I've run 17 different companies. I've done this a lot, and when anybody ever comes to me with an idea for marketing, I always say there's 4 things: test, track, modify, and repeat. Test, see what works, just like you're doing with Reddit. You're gonna test. You're gonna put content out there for a while for a certain frequency to identify whether or not it's giving you citations and whether it's actually elevating you. So that's test. You're gonna track it, because what I like about the internet, and you being a CMO, you have to track what works. You can't say, well, I tried everything. Well, really, you tried everything? What exactly did you do? Well, I sent out to this, right? It's like that doesn't make. So test, track, modify, pick one thing that you're going to modify, and then repeat the test and celebrate. So when it comes to marketing, I always tell people, don't start simple, get complicated later. Don't overthink it. At the end of the day, again, like we started in the episode, it's giving them enough information that they can make good decisions. So any closing thoughts you have for our listeners that you want to finalize and share?
Yeah, I mean, I think you asked what's also ahead. So obviously the women's franchise is a big deal. We're in our 4th or 5th year now of being the IFA's preferred vendor as Benetrends. So obviously love working with them. The American Franchise Act is a big deal that we'll be supporting in 2026. If you haven't heard about it, check out franchise.org, because lots of information about the American Franchise Act came out of the Advocacy Summit in DC this past September. But on a personal note, Christopher Stewart and I from Bloom and Blinds actually created a nonprofit that we're highly encouraging anyone in franchising to get involved with. It's called Furry Frans, Furry.
I saw you just posted on it, because right before this episode, I looked to see if and I'm like, Furry Frans, what's that? So I do want to hear more about that. So so we do have a website if you're interested in getting involved. We had our kickoff event at the Advocacy Summit in DC alongside IFA. We raised 500 stuffed animals for children in crisis. Oh, that's so cool.
Back. Yeah, it's really cool. It's easy to get involved, and that's why we did it. I think the amount we all travel, and there are franchisor conferences where their franchisees come every year. There are IFA, franchise updates, Springboard. I mean, the list goes on. We have 50 to 60 on our schedule at Benetrends. And so I think a way that people are leaving their families for these events, they're spending time and energy and a lot of money at these. And so Chris and I saw that there was a gap to have anyone participate from a lot of different angles. You can be a single person flying through the airport and buy a $5 beanie baby at the airport to donate. You can bring 50 of your children's that you don't want in your house anymore. You can donate thousands of dollars on behalf of your company to the nonprofit. And so we are officially a 501c3, and we're having events pop up everywhere at WFN events, local FBN events, at franchisor conferences, and everything in between. Chris is a former paramedic and firefighter, and I myself have done a lot of nonprofit work, just kind of in some other realms, whether that be the military or the ALS community. So we brought this together as a way for events to also give back to our local communities, because that's what franchising is all about. So if you want more information, again, you can visit furryfriends.com, but we're very proud of it. And our first launch was incredible. So
Furry, I want us to make sure it's clear for furryfriends.com.
Not friends, Frans, like franchising.
Frans. I was going to say, I thought it was Frans because I saw the hashtag. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I want to say it for the episode.
In the franchise community. Yeah. So furryfriends.com, and you can fill out our form on there if you're interested in getting involved in hosting your own event. And it's a great way to give back to your local fire, EMS, or police stations.
Well, I'm certainly going to check it out because, again, I speak to multiple brands each year, and they're always looking for some other way to give back and be philanthropic. So that's great. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing all the great insights.
Yeah, this is so fun. I think every podcast should wing it.
Awesome. All right. So thanks for tuning in to Fordify Live, where we're all about accelerating your business growth. Until next time, I want you to keep innovating, keep growing, and keep fortifying your success.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.